Yeah, I really wanted to have this conversation because um, I have known you for I'm not sure how long now, but it's
About 8 years.
8 years. Yeah. Yeah. And we've been on a journey together, um, understanding the mind, basically, if I can say it like that. And I wanted to have this conversation today because I know that you've done a lot of great work with people who have or have had cancer. And I know that you have also gone through your own process of having cancer. And so I'd just like to have a conversation about that and see if this could be helpful for anyone who um, is struggling with cancer or if they know somebody else who does that. And yeah, so maybe you can start with sharing some of your experience both professionally but also personally with cancer.
Yeah, I'm feeling just so moved already just by the opportunity to share um, what an incredible journey that I've had both professionally and personally. So, in 2012, I was invited in to be a lifestyles coach to help people who were on a cancer healing journey have an easier time with lifestyle choices to support their healing. And at the time, it was it was wonderful to know that I knew nothing. I didn't know the value. Sometimes you think it's great to know, then you can share what you know, but it was great to not know because I really got to listen and and partner with people on their own journey and help them find out what was meaningful and valuable for them. And along that, I saw like some people did it in privacy. No one knew that they were there at this clinic doing these treatments. And initially, I thought that was wrong. People need support. People need to tell their family. And then I came to see like how brilliant it was, how that was their wisdom guiding them to have their own process, their own healing journey, and that the people around them might not be have been supportive in the way that they needed at the time. Um, but a couple things that stood out of real importance was as much as possible being in your life. Because when you're on a cancer healing journey, it can feel all consuming. Appointments, treatments, even if you're not in appointments and treatments, that just it can just take up every millimeter in your brain of thought. And and I've done a lot of programs on are you in your thinking or are you in the room? Are you in your life? So however, whatever that can be, even doing something meaningful in the middle of treatment, whether it's a reading or a handcraft or a conversation or whatever's meaningful for people. So that's one thing that feels really valuable, important on so many levels, on so many levels.
Mhm.
And whether it's you or whether it's a family member, really supporting people in having their own journey and their own process, because how I would do it has changed over and over and over again. And then I had the opportunity to be in it and receive my own cancer diagnosis and have and start fresh with me how I would do it.
Mhm.
Um, because of this understanding that we've been sharing with one another and participating with common mentors and sharing with our clients, I didn't know that when the diagnosis came to me, when the doctor called and said, you have blah, blah, blah cancer, which I didn't hear any of the words because what I heard inside of me was healed.
mm,
I just knew it was healed, um, or going to be healed. I couldn't have made that. I couldn't have manifested that. I couldn't have wished for that to happen. I just had a knowing
mm,
for me, and partly because of the the clinic that I worked in, this first clinic that I worked in. Um, the doctor used to have a video on his website introducing himself, and he said, "If you cut your finger, what are the chances it's going to heal?"
mm.
And so, for you, what are the chances if you cut your finger, it's going to heal?
Yeah, it's
What?
100%.
100%.
Yeah.
And he said, people need to know that that's possible for that happens with cancer too.
Mm,
That's possible for cancer too. And it sounded like a good idea for
mm,
many years
mm,
until I received the diagnosis for myself, and then I knew it to be possible.
mm,
And my journey was very divinely guided of what to do, what not to do, who to see, who not to see. I never put, I tried to not put no up on anything. I just would put not now.
mm,
And there was a time where I made an appointment with a specialist. And right after I made that appointment for like 3 hours, I was cranky, bitchy, miserable. And I was just like, what's going on? I was like, oh, I went against myself.
mm,
I went against myself and scheduled an appointment that I don't want to do right now,
mm,
that I'm not calling. And I canceled the appointment. Um, and I never set out on a journey to do my healing in a certain way. I just took the next right step that was for me,
mm,
the next right step that was for me, and stayed engaged in my life
mm,
as I had shared a little while ago, whatever that looked like every day, you
mm,
know. And how do I want to live my life? I mean, so that's the other thing that cancer diagnosis can be really helpful with, is that, I mean, we're all going to die.
mm,
No one's getting out of this alive. And a diagnosis that has a potential for being terminal, for ending life, one can live in fear and live in worry and live in upset and live in crisis, which does nothing to support the health of the body.
mm,
In fact, takes away, slows down the natural healing process of whatever it is. Or someone can be engaged and live life to the fullest.
mm,
And I've been kind of wanting to do that most of my adult life. And this just took it to another level.
mm,
Like, what's really important? What's really valuable? What's really meaningful for me? And to really take it as a moment to moment, day by day thing, not like, okay, I'm going to do this. That it wasn't like a bucket list check off at all.
mm, mm.
Yeah. So
Yeah, beautiful. So just like a deeper sense of listening to that divine guiding in the moment. Is that something would you say that you saw a higher degree of value of that through this process?
I don't know if I saw a higher degree of value, but I saw it was just non-negotiable. It just became like non-negotiable.
Mm,
So about a year and almost a year and a half before I received the diagnosis, I had an inner voice said, "Up level
mm,
or self-care, you don't need a diagnosis."
mm,
And it's really interesting. Like when the diagnosis came, I think without this understanding, I would have been like, "Oh, you didn't listen hard enough. You didn't work hard enough. You didn't do something hard enough." And it was
mm,
like, "Oh, I got the message. I did the best that I could over the past year and a half, and here I am now."
mm, mm.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And you know, I'm also just wondering, like, really listening to that internal guidance system
Mm,
and taking care of your state of mind.
mm.
Um, how important is that really for the healing process?
It feels crucial. It feels crucial. I think everyone knows that the body heals better, works better in a low stress, no stress mode, right?
Mm,
I mean, it's pretty common. It's pretty common knowledge now. It wasn't many years ago.
mm,
But I don't think what people know is how infinite the levels of peace are.
mm,
Like, because I used to live with anxiety and be medicated for anxiety, I like my level of peace was was so much lower than that. But there's it's now so much lower, and it's endless how much peace is available.
mm,
And the body just works better without being in fight or flight. I mean, when you're in fight or flight, just the simple idea, the basic idea that you have more blood in your extremities so that you can run away from danger
mm,
impairs that impairs digestion and all the internal organs doing what they need to do to function at their optimal level
mm,
so that you can run.
mm,
And I think the other thing that really helped me on my journey and supporting the almost 300 people that I have on their journey was knowing that source, divine intelligence, mind, whatever word, universal energy is the source of healing.
mm,
Like there's only so much that's on me.
mm.
I
Yeah.
really know that. I know that so deeply because otherwise it's the only thing that makes sense to me. The mystery of that makes more sense to me because you hear people that smoke and drink their whole life and never have cancer
Mm,
and live a long time, and then you hear of people that are young and suffer and receive a advanced cancer diagnosis. So the mystery of that
mm,
feels like my best explanation right now is that it's up to this universal intelligence. And if that's true, then listening. for that guidance from universal intelligence.
mm,
And how that comes through is different. Some people, how people receive the messages or the guidance comes through. And I know that when I'm under tension or pressure, I have a harder time differentiating between, is that guidance
mm, yeah.
or is that my ego, right?
Mm,
And for me personally, I used to try and make big decisions from guidance,
mm,
and it was so much harder because there was so much more riding on it.
mm,
So when people aren't sure, I offer that they just play with it
mm,
as a gentle game about things that have no consequence. Like, should I buy this apple or this bunch of bananas or both?
mm,
Should I turn right or left to go to the destination that it's 1 minute difference? Like things that don't have a consequence, and get used to the feeling
mm,
that accompanies with why did I choose to go right this time?
mm,
And then and then it becomes easier, or maybe not easier, but well, maybe easier, I don't know, but clearer.
mm,
When should I what should I do about these options that are in front of me?
yeah. Yeah. And regarding that, like, because there's going to be, if you're going through chemotherapy, and or fear of death, or things can happen, so how do you tackle these challenging issues? How does that divine intelligence, you know, is that still available there? And how does
Yeah.
that it work through those challenging
Well,
situations?
those feel like two big questions. So let's talk about the chemotherapy first.
Yeah.
Actually, because I just had a client yesterday call me up and, oh, this treatment that I went under just is, wiping me, just knocked me on my bottom.
Mm,
And I just picked up the phone and called her right away and said, maybe, maybe it was the treatment. But what if we know that healing is accelerated in the rest mode,
mm,
and the body is like, no, you can't do anything. Like you're gonna have as much fatigue as you need in order to slow down and rest so that the body can heal.
mm,
Like, do you understand can you feel the difference between something's making me exhausted
mm.
and wow, my body is so wise to not let me have the energy to do anything so that it can rest
Yeah.
and work and heal.
Mm, mm.
I mean, which one feels more true? I
Yeah.
mean, I could make a case that both are true,
Mm,
right? Both are true. But how do I feel when I think when I make how so if I'm making the meaning of the situation,
mm,
when I give the meaning that the treatment is doing something to me,
mm.
my experience is way different than my body is doing exactly what it needs
Yeah.
to maximize my healing potential.
Yeah. I can feel. I can feel the difference in that.
Right. So whatever the fatigue is like one of the most common symptoms,
Mm,
but whatever the symptom is,
mm,
you can use that whatever the symptom is.
mm, mm.
Um, like a lot of people get concerned about weight loss when they're having
Okay.
um, cancer treatment. And if you're overweight, it can feel like a good thing. But if you don't have weight to lose, it can feel like it can feel heavy, and it can really feel heavy for family members and loved ones.
Mm,
Like, oh, they can't get too underweight. And what do animals do in the wild when they're injured? They fast. They
mm,
rest and they fast. And so sometimes, excuse me, um, shifting diet, having a short fasting period, or intermittent fasting period where there's 12 or 14 or 16 hours a day that you're not eating, or just switching up what
mm,
you're eating and allowing your guidance to be like, that's supposed to be good for me, but I don't want it. I want this.
mm. Yeah.
Or I'm going to try this rather than I have to drink this because I have to eat this because it's good for me. It's like, I'm going
Mm,
to try this and see what my body does with it.
yeah.
Being like your own explorer on the journey.
Mm, mm,
And again, as loved ones can be really helpful to be curious about what supports people rather than think that we know what's good for someone else.
mm. Yeah.
And also listen to your, I want to say to family members, listen to your language,
Mm,
because we are not going through this.
mm,
It's the person's, it's the loved one's journey. And when people say we're going to the doctor, it's
mm,
different than I'm going to the doctor with someone.
mm,
And yes, as a loved one, you're going through your own process, but that's yours, not your loved one's process.
mm.
And that deserves its own support and and because sometimes I think loved ones can like or gets in their own fear, they grab a hold and they want to make it a we thing to connect with the person
Mm. Yeah. Mm,
rather than to know that they are eternally connected to the person no matter what.
mm.
I was I was about to say I was really surprised, but when I think about my own journey and how we all want to be loved and accepted by others, um, I was so amazed at how many people do things for someone else and not for themselves.
Mm.
And that feels like I don't know, I don't want to put a label on it, but I just want to say the healing journey is ours individually.
Yeah.
And doing something to please a family member, a doctor, it just doesn't feel good. It just doesn't feel good.
Yeah. Mm. Oof. Yeah.
So you asked me two questions. And now death. You want to talk about death?
Yeah. Yeah. If you
Oh,
want to say something about, how how do you
Yeah. And
tackle
here I
it?
am laughing about it. Mm. Well, you know what? I mean, I grew up with like no experience
Mm,
losing anyone except for my grandparents. And like, there's like this grandparents are supposed to die thing that I had as a teenager.
mm,
So it seems to me, I don't know if this is true, but it seems to me that people's fear of death is often has some relationship to what they think happens after death.
mm,
So if people feel like death is the end and there's nothing that happens after the last breath,
mm,
that seems for lots of people to invoke a lot of fear, or maybe I should say a different fear
mm,
than when people think that like they have a soul and the soul is eternal and goes on.
mm,
So, or even a possibility. Like
mm.
even I remember, well, I don't really believe it, but maybe there's a possibility that there's life after death or the soul goes on. Just opening that as a possibility kind of loosened the the fear for me.
Mm,
And then reading about near death experiences just confirmed for me that there was that the soul was eternal. I could probably spend a whole hour talking about my own personal journey through that, but when I really get down to it with people, it's really not the fear of death, it's the fear of suffering.
yeah.
And I don't know, is there a country in the world that doesn't offer a hospice services? I don't know about that. It just occurred to me. I just don't know. You have hospice services and where you are?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And like hospice is there to
Mm,
reduce suffering.
mm,
That and they're masterful at that.
mm,
They're ma I mean that's their job.
mm,
There's no one better that can manage that they can manage pain
mm,
and suffering. Most people don't. Many people have ideas about what that looks like, but they're the ones that can. And also relaxing into that process, whether you're the person or a family member, can also reduce suffering.
mm,
And people get discharged. Like some people, I don't know about how it is there, but in the
mm,
US, people used to think like the hospice was the like once you're on hospice, then you're gone. But I know I have a client who's been discharged from hospice 3 times on
mm,
off on off.
mm,
I had a client who was in and out of a hospice facility. Very few people, I mean, it is accurate that very few people
mm,
get discharged once they're in an inpatient hospice because you don't, in the US, you don't get admitted to inpatient hospice unless you're very close to the end and have symptoms that are unmanageable at home.
mm,
But he was discharged 3 times from the facility. So, um, and maybe just having someone to talk to about it
mm.
that's not, they can just listen and not be invested in, like, doesn't have the personal investment in it.
Yeah. Mm,
And I apologize if everything that I've said sounds like cold or uncaring. It's a rough time for sure,
mm.
but we don't have to make it any more rough than it is.
Yeah.
That's what I want people to know.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, just, be in your life. This one thing that I heard, um, really respect your divine guidance system, see it, trust it, just listen to it, and really also know that the healing um, is optimally effective when we're in a relaxed state of mind. Um,
And a cancer diagnosis does not require tension, worry, and fear. It has it, but
yeah,
it's not required, and it's not required to be a steady companion through it.
yeah.
Um, you started to say something that I just want to go into. Like, I don't know how people know who they are. Like, I don't know how people discover or uncover their essence, the essence of that took its first breath and celebrated its first birthday and 10th birthday and will take its last breath. Like, however people discover that about themselves,
Mm,
like their true, that's to me, that's the true self, the essential nature. I, I mean, have talked about it for a while, long time. It sounded like a good idea. But I think that when the cancer diagnosis came across to me, I really knew who I was.
mm,
And because of that, the cancer diagnosis was not bothersome. Like, I mean, there were a couple contributing factors to my experience that I alluded to, but knowing who I am,
mm,
like not the idea
mm,
that I'm a soul or a divine being having a human experience, but feeling that, experiencing that, that's that was the gift of that diagnosis is that I really, really saw that.
mm, mm,
And knowing where my experience came from. So it's not like I wouldn't allow myself to have fear or worry, but it was so short lived
mm,
because it felt like poison to my body. So why would I drink up poison?
mm,
Why would I knowingly put my hand on a hot stove and hold it there? I might go near the heat. I might not go near the stove. Oh, I know what's going to happen if I put my hand there.
mm,
Feel the fear and let it and in feeling the sensation, the experience of it travels by because all feelings are transient all the time, unless we're the ones that push repeat over and over and over again.
mm,
And sometimes we do that. And I want to say I had the full human experience because after all that was done and I was cleared, I had a CT scan for something else and it showed something. And for several weeks, I was in this like low level fear, worry thing, like, oh, maybe it's not over. And, this, and I didn't allow myself to feel it because I confused that if I felt it, that I would be energizing it or
Hmm.
adding to it.
Yeah.
And once I allowed myself to feel it, just feeling my thinking, it's all made up. I don't really know what's going on. It dropped. The fear dropped.
Yeah.
And I was kind of just in waiting mode till I got the all till I got the confirmation of what I originally knew, which that was nothing too.
Hmm.
So I add that in because that's the whole human experience.
Hmm.
Fearing the unknown, not fearing the known, no matter what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful and that's hopeful as well. And thank you so much for sharing that, Ellen. I just I hope this can be, I know that the potential of what you're
Mm.
sharing here can be of huge value uh to somebody's who is going through hard times or challenging times or
Mhm.
cancer, you know, so
Or anything, or anything.
or anything. So yeah. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Many blessings.